Now raises serious questions about the strategy against ISIS. Some critics saying that President Obama has it all wrong, they believe, especially for saying that the attacks from ISIS that day, or apparently talking about ISIS earlier, I should say, saying that they were contained when he was looking at the Syria-Iraq part of this issue. Presidential candidate Marco Rubio believes that this has now become a matter of life and death.
We are at war with radical Islam, with an interpretation of Islam by a significant number of people around the world who they believe now justifies them in killing those who don't agree with their ideology. This is a clash of civilizations. And as I said at the debate earlier this week, there is no middle ground on this. Either they win or we win.
Former House Speaker Newt Gingrich is a Fox News contributor and the author of Duplicity. Newt, welcome. Good to see you here this morning.
Good to be with you.
You know, he speaks in a way that is not what we heard at the Democratic debate on Saturday night. So I'm asking you if this issue creates a much stronger contrast between Republicans and Democrats when it comes to how they interpret what we're facing.
Well, unfortunately it does. I mean, I think we're in one of those very difficult historic moments where the ideology and the interest groups of the Democratic Party literally blind them. It's almost a psychosis from seeing reality. And so they keep re-explaining things in ways that are less and less rational. You heard the president the other day. But you have to start with a definition of what's really going on. This is not a fight with ISIS. ISIS is simply one of a series of companies, if you will. Think of them as organizations. There's an underlying movement towards Islamic supremacism, which says you either submit to Islam or we kill you. Now, that is a legitimate, it's a frightening, but it's historically a legitimate position. And a substantial minority, millions of people in the Muslim world believe it. Not most Muslims, but millions believe it. That means, for example, notice what we're learning about France. French citizens, Belgian citizens. I mean, one of these people have to ask themselves is, if somebody is born in Belgium, grows up in the Belgian welfare system, goes to the Belgian schools, has a chance to live in the Belgian economy, what is it that's going on that they decide killing people is a better future? And this is something which, frankly, was originally noticed by the British when they had the bombings in the London subway back in 1996. And again, it was the same thing. Everybody involved in the London subway bombing was British. So we have to confront the enemy within, and this is where the French bombing the capital in Syria is nice symbolically, but there are 47 mosques, according to one estimate, in the Paris area that are teaching Sharia, that are teaching that you have the right to kill people if they don't submit. Yeah. Now the French, if they're serious, are going to have to look at home, not just look overseas.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about mosque surveillance in this country as well. It's obviously a very controversial issue, but there are mosques that are, you know, very peaceful, where people are practicing every day. But there are mosques that have been singled out as real hotbeds, and if they're protected, I don't know how you get in there and investigate. I don't know how you get intelligence.
Well, I think we're going to have to reach a decision, and this is where Jeb Bush's comment about declaring war may begin to be very relevant. We've got to reach a decision that an imam who preaches Sharia, and an imam, for example, there are at least 21 people who've left Minnesota to go back to become fighters against Western civilization. Are they all from the same mosque? Is there somebody who's a central connection point? Advocating, recruiting, and funding will have to become illegal, and we will have to have the nerve to enforce the law. Yeah. It's very clear. They are going to kill us unless we adapt to this new reality. And the challenge for President Obama is that he finds it extraordinarily painful to recognize what's happening.
You know, one thing I found so striking when you watch the cavalcade of strikes that were brought in by France in the wake of this over the course of the weekend, and they said, we're going after a munitions depot in Raqqa, and we're going after training camps in Raqqa. And I thought to myself, we've been bombing in Syria for months. How have we not been able to hit the munitions depot and the training camp?
Well, because we haven't been serious. It's all been publicity. We sent over 1,000 strikes a day against Saddam Hussein. We're using like 20 strikes, 15 strikes, 10 strikes. This is public relations instead of war. Furthermore, the problem is not a supply dump in Syria. The problem is on the internet It is the spreading of an ideology of hatred, and it's the spreading of a willingness to kill people. Yeah. And we're going to have to come to grips with a very different war that has very different objective requirements.
Yeah, it's a weird world when you're sort of comforted by the fact that this group Anonymous, who does, hacking, is going to start going against ISIS. I thought, well, that's good. That's a positive development. Hopefully that will help. Newt Gingrich, thank you. Always good to see you, sir. Let's go back to Bill.